Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into, well, one of the most critical and honestly quite heartbreaking conservation stories happening right now. We're talking about the vaquita.
Yeah, it's a tough one. This is a creature that's so close to vanishing. We think there are only about 10 individuals left. I mean, you couldn't even fill a small bench on a sports team with the entire species. It's the world's most endangered marine mammal.
It's really staggering when you think about it in those terms. And if you're
Okay.
trying to picture one, imagine the smallest cetacean out there. They're porpoises, technically, not whales, but tiny ones. Only about, what, 1.5 meters long?
That's right. Small enough you could, well, probably fit one in a large bathtub.
Mhm.
And they have these really distinct dark rings around their eyes and mouth, almost like they're wearing black lipstick in a smile shape. Quite cute, actually.
But despite decades of conservation work, we're literally staring at the possibility of losing them completely. So our mission today, really, is to dig into why. It's not just biology, is it? There's this whole tangle of economics, even organized crime involved.
Exactly. It's arguably one of the most complex conservation puzzles on the planet. We need to understand how all these forces, the biology, the illegal fishing, the global demand, pushed this little porpoise right to the very edge, and maybe what's finally offering some hope.
Okay, let's start with their home. It's this incredibly specific, beautiful place, but also kind of a trap for them. The vaquita only lives in this tiny corner of Mexico.
Just the northern tip of the Sea of Cortez or the Gulf of California, nowhere else on Earth. Jacques Cousteau famously called that whole area the aquarium of the world.
An aquarium, but one they can't leave.
Precisely. It's become an aquatic prison in a way. Their whole existence depends on the very specific conditions right there. It's shallow water, maybe 50 meters deep, and really importantly, it gets fed by the Colorado River.
The river flow, that's key, right? Brings in nutrients.
Huge amounts of nutrients. That makes the water very murky, very turbid, lots of sediment.
Which sounds bad, but for the vaquita.
It's perfect. They're specialized hunters in murky water.
Uh-huh.
They use this really sophisticated sonar echolocation to find their prey, fish, squid, in conditions where, most other predators just couldn't operate effectively.
So that adaptation, the thing that made them successful for so long.
Is exactly what traps them now. They are so specialized for that niche. If you go outside that small zone, the water gets clearer, deeper, it's less productive for their kind of food. They simply can't survive elsewhere. All conservation efforts have to be laser focused on that one spot.
Okay, so they're stuck in paradise. But then there's this other creature living there, the totoaba fish. And this is where things get really dark, isn't it? The threat isn't natural.
Not at all. It's entirely human-driven, centered on this totoaba. And the totoaba itself is impressive, can grow up to 2 meters, weigh 100 kilos. A big fish.
And the part that's causing all the trouble, it's not the meat.
No, unbelievably, it's the swim bladder. That big gelatinous air sac fish used to control their buoyancy.
Right. And why is that so valuable? It sounds absurd.
It is absurd. It's highly prized in traditional Chinese medicine. They call it aquatic cocaine. There's zero scientific basis for the claims, curing diseases, improving vitality, all that stuff. But the demand, especially among certain wealthy groups in Asia, is just off the charts.
Off the charts is putting it mildly. We're talking serious black market money. Like how much?
Well, right there on the coast, a fisherman might get, say, $5,000 US for a fresh bladder. But once it's dried and smuggled into China, a single kilogram can fetch up to $80,000.
80,000 USD per kilo.
80,000. That's more valuable than gold, gram for gram. More valuable than actual cocaine in some cases.
Wow. Okay. So when that kind of money enters a relatively poor fishing region.
You don't just get local fishermen trying their luck. You get international organized crime syndicates moving in. They see the profit margin. They start financing operations, putting pressure on locals, harassing authorities, controlling the trade.
So it transforms from a conservation issue into like a narco conflict almost.
It really does. These groups provide the boats, the gear specifically, these huge illegal gill nets, and they employ local fishermen, sometimes through coercion, sometimes just because the money's too good to refuse. And they actively fight back against any enforcement.
And the vaquita just gets caught in that crossfire, literally.
Exactly. This is the devastating connection. The vaquita is about the same size as a juvenile totoaba, the size they're often targeting. So when these massive gill nets are set, often drifting for miles, they catch everything of that size.
Indiscriminate.
Totally indiscriminate. And the vaquita, being a mammal, needs to breathe air. When it gets tangled in that net, it can't surface. It just drowns. It's accidental, but it's deadly.
Let's just pause on the impact numbers. This illegal totoaba fishing using these nets, It decimated the vaquita population.
Absolutely catastrophic. They estimated around 600 vaquitas back in 1997. By 2008, that was down to maybe 200. But during the real peak of the totoaba boom, say mid-2010s, the mortality rate for vaquitas hit almost 50% per year.
Half the population dying every single year.
Imagine that, losing half of what's left year after year. It's almost impossible to comprehend that rate of decline. That's the scale of the emergency conservationists we're facing.
Which leads us straight into the human conflict side of this. Because trying to stop this means impacting people's livelihoods, right?
Oh, massively. You have local communities, artisanal fishermen, who rely on fishing to feed their families. Outside of peak seasons, they might be making less than $10 a day. So when the government comes in and says, right, this whole area, the zero tolerance area, or ZTA, is completely off limits. No fishing, you can't even sail through it.
That's a huge economic blow.
It's devastating. Even if they understand the vaquita is important, they see it as the government or these outside groups taking away their ability to survive.
Yeah.
Especially when the alternative being offered, this illegal totoaba fishing, pays so much.
So you get this intense friction. You mentioned NGOs like Sea Shepherd were involved early on.
Yes, and initially their approach was quite confrontational. They focused on direct action going out, finding these illegal gillnets, and pulling them out of the water. And they pulled out a lot. One campaign retrieved over 1,100 nets, and something like 91% were totoaba nets.
So they were definitely targeting the right gear. But that direct action, it led to clashes.
It absolutely did. Things got very tense, their ships were attacked, Molotov cocktails thrown, knives wielded, it became dangerous. And, tragically, in 2020, a fisherman died when his boat, apparently harassing the Sea Shepherd vessel, crashed into it.
That's awful, and it raises a really difficult question, doesn't it? How do you enforce conservation in a situation that volatile without just escalating the violence?
Exactly. It forced a rethink. Sea Shepherd, for instance, shifted tactics. They moved away from pulling nets themselves and focused more on supporting scientific monitoring, like deploying those acoustic detectors we'll talk about, and reporting illegal activity directly to the Mexican Navy for enforcement.
A necessary, maybe tactical retreat.
You could call it that. And it was controversial, but many experts, like Dr. Barbara Taylor, who's been central to Vaquita science, acknowledge that despite the criticism of their earlier tactics, Sea Shepherd's presence probably bought the Vaquita crucial time. She said the Vaquita would have gone extinct if it wasn't for Sea Shepherd being out there disrupting the fishing.
Okay, let's pivot to that science you mentioned. Counting these last few vaquitas must be incredibly hard.
Oh, it's a nightmare. They're tiny, remember. They usually travel alone or maybe in pairs. They don't make big splashes like dolphins. They actively avoid engine noise from boats. And they live in that really murky water. You can't just fly over and count them.
So aerial surveys are out. How do you do it then?
Listening. That was the breakthrough. Scientists figured out they could deploy these underwater microphones, basically hydrophones, anchored to the seabed. They run 24/7, just recording sound.
And they listen for the vaquita's clicks.
Exactly. Vaquitas use echolocation, making these very distinctive high-frequency clicks to navigate and find food. The recorders log everything, and then sophisticated software filters out all the other noise, shrimp, boats, whatever, and identifies those unique vaquita clicks.
That must generate a ton of data.
Massive amounts. The first big analysis had something like 3,000 combined days of recordings, but it was incredibly powerful. This acoustic monitoring gave the first really solid, undeniable evidence of just how fast the population was crashing, that horrifying 50% decline per year. It let scientists raise the alarm with hard numbers.
And even with those numbers plummeting to around 10, there was this surprising finding about their genetics, wasn't there? Challenging old ideas.
Yeah, this is huge. There's this kind of rule of thumb in conservation biology that once a population drops below, say, 50 or maybe 100 individuals, it's probably doomed. It won't have enough genetic diversity left to adapt or recover, even if the threats are removed. Too much inbreeding, basically.
The extinction vortex idea.
Right. But geneticists managed to get samples from vaquitas collected back in the 1980s, when there were still hundreds, and compare their DNA to samples from around 2015, when the numbers were already critically low.
And what did they find?
Amazingly, almost no loss of genetic diversity. The remaining vaquitas were just as genetically diverse, or rather, had the same low level of diversity as the population did decades earlier.
Wait, how is that possible? And why low diversity to begin with?
It suggests they might have always been a species with naturally low genetic diversity, Maybe they went through a population bottleneck long ago, or they're just inherently adapted to being somewhat inbred because they've always lived in this one small, isolated area. They're adapted to low diversity.
So unlike other species that suffer badly from inbreeding depression when numbers get low,
The vaquita seems less vulnerable to that specific problem. The conclusion was stunning. Biologically, genetically, they can recover. Their genes aren't the bottleneck. The bottleneck is us killing them in nets. If we stop that, they have the inherent resilience to bounce back.
that is incredible. But before that genetic hope was clear, there was that desperate attempt, Vaquita CPR in 2017.
Ah, yes. Vaquita CPR was a last-ditch effort born of desperation. The idea was to capture some of the remaining vaquitas and move them to protected sea pens, kind of like a sanctuary, while trying to get the gillnet situation under control in the wild.
A sort of ARC project.
Exactly. But it ended tragically. They managed to capture 2 females. The first was released quickly because it was too young. The second, an adult female they named Esperanza, which means hope in Spanish.
Oh, no.
She died within hours of capture. Just from the stress of capture and handling, it was utterly heartbreaking, but it delivered a very harsh, very clear message.
The captivity wasn't the answer.
Absolutely not. These animals are just not suited for it. The only solution had to be in their natural habitat. It meant doubling down on eliminating those gillnets entirely from the Sea of Cortez. There was no plan B involving sea pens.
And that hard lesson led directly to this new phase, Project Esperanza, named for that female, focused on making the ZTA truly safe.
Yes, it shifted the focus entirely to practical, on-the-water enforcement and collaboration. And the single most effective tool turned out to be surprisingly low-tech, in a way.
What was that?
Concrete blocks. The Mexican Navy deployed 193 massive concrete blocks, studded with tall steel hooks across the seabed within the zero-tolerance area.
Like underwater barricades.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Anti-trawling blocks, basically. The idea is brutally simple. If someone tries to deploy an illegal gillnet in that protected zone, as soon as it drags along the bottom, it snags on those hooks and gets torn to shreds. It makes fishing with those nets impossible, or at least incredibly costly and frustrating.
And did it actually work?
Amazingly well. Experts credit those concrete blocks, combined with increased Navy patrols, for a reduction in illegal gillnet fishing inside the ZTA by about 90%.
90%. That's huge.
It's considered the main reason the vaquita is still here today, frankly. That physical deterrent has been absolutely critical in protecting those last few individuals.
But it wasn't just about blocks and patrols, was it? There was also a shift in working with the community.
Yes, and this is maybe just as important for the long run. Conservation groups realized they couldn't just be the outsiders imposing rules. They had to build trust and find ways for the community to be part of the solution
How did they do that?
by actively engaging fishermen, helping them trial and switch to alternative, vaquita-safe fishing gear, things like small trawls that don't catch porpoises, or hook and line methods. Also, paying them to retrieve ghost nets.
Ah, those lost or discarded nets that just keep fishing on their own.
Exactly. They're a huge problem. So recruiting fishermen, using their local knowledge and boat skills to find and remove those ghost nets, provides income and makes them allies. They also started holding these fishermen days, bringing fishermen together with scientists to explain the research, the goals, answer questions directly.
Breaking down that us versus them mentality.
Precisely. And it worked. Trust started to build, to the point where now some local fishermen are actively helping the scientists deploy and retrieve those acoustic monitoring devices. They're part of the data collection.
That's a remarkable turnaround. But you mentioned earlier, success needs all stakeholders. Was there a weak link?
There was, according to some analyses. While the Navy stepped up enforcement and NGOs and scientists were doing their part, the civilian fisheries authorities were often seen as, well, absent is the word used, not fully engaged or effective in regulating legal fishing or supporting the transition to safer gear outside the ZTA.
So it highlights that you need everyone pulling in the same direction. Navy, scientists, NGOs, the community, and strong government regulatory support.
Absolutely. If any one piece is missing, the whole structure is weakened. The vaquita's survival depends on this comprehensive, coordinated effort. It can't just be one group's responsibility.
So bringing this all together, what's the big takeaway from the Vaquita story? It feels like more than just saving one animal.
Oh, it absolutely is. The Vaquita saga is like a perfect, tragic storm. It shows you what happens when a species with unique biology confined to one small place gets caught in the crosshairs of global economics, powerful organized crime, and the desperate needs of local communities just trying to survive.
And the path forward, the only glimmer of success came from shifting away from direct confrontation.
towards practical, maybe even blunt solutions, like the concrete blocks, but crucially, combined with building genuine partnerships and trust with the local community. Addressing their economic needs has to be part of the conservation plan. You can't just ban things. You have to offer viable alternatives.
And perhaps the most striking part for me is that genetic resilience. The discovery that even at maybe 10 individuals, the vaquita can biologically recover.
It's incredible, isn't it? It flies in the face of what we thought we knew about minimum viable populations. It tells us the core problem here isn't some inherent flaw in the vaquita itself. The problem is entirely human.
Which leaves us with a really provocative thought, doesn't it? If the vaquita, pushed literally to the brink, still has the biological capacity to rebound, how many other endangered species out there, species we might have mentally written off as too small, too fragmented, too genetically compromised?
Might actually be perfectly capable of recovering, too.
Yeah. Maybe their biology isn't the main issue either. Maybe they're just waiting for us to solve the human problems, the habitat destruction, the poaching, the lack of political will, the economic conflicts. If we could fix our side of the equation, perhaps their own natural resilience could surprise us all.
It's a profound question. The vaquita forces us to ask.
Yeah.
Are we sometimes too quick to give up hope on the biology when the real challenge lies in fixing ourselves?